me tell you a little bit about this project. It is called the Southern Quilting Project, and it grew out of a conversation that I had a couple of years ago with a volunteer, and she had come to see our Southern Vernacular Art exhibition and wondered why we only had 3 quilts as part of that show. And as we talked, I learned that there was this rich tradition of quilting that came out of our area, and I was excited to learn that a lot of the quilts were still owned by families that had that tradition because they survived in Florida's climate due to cedar chests. So part of the Southern Quilting Project is From the Cedar Chest, Southern Quilting from 1830s to today. And that features quilts that came from throughout our region from almost every decade over 2 centuries, which is a really strong show and a really exciting thing to be able to present. Another neat theme is that over 2 centuries, many generations of a family would start and finish one quilt. Or one quilt would capture the history of a person through their clothing that they wore throughout their lives that was incorporated into a quilt. Or quilts captured the history of an entire family or important symbols and cultural aspects of a family that were handed down.
This quilt is what we call the flour sack quilt, and the top of it was created in about the 1950s from flour sacks. So back in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, marketing companies and their marketers realized that if they sold their seeds or flour or grain in colorful sacks, women would tell their husbands to buy them. And 3 flour sacks would make 1 dress, and that was where people got all in one. So people would use these flour sacks and make quilts from them. They'd make dresses. And so this one was made about the 1950s. You can see all the different colors and all of the different types of feed sacks there were, flour sacks. We're not exactly sure which ones they were, but they were in a family in Havana made by Sarah Nicholson Adams. And she pieced together the top, and then it sat in a cedar chest for decades, and her daughter-in-law Wendy Adams found it and decided to complete the quilt. And so she's machine quilted this entire backing and binding on it, and has really kind of saved it and did a really tight machine stitching here just to make sure that the pieces could stay together as much as possible, because it is a pretty old quilt.
The Southern Quilting Project is one of the most powerful projects this organization has ever done. The Gadsden Arts Center and Museum is a community-owned art museum. That means that everything we do is driven by the interests and needs of our community, and we exist because our community supports this museum through contributions and membership and volunteer work and leadership. So this particular project I first envisioned as a very small project with local families lending quilts, and it's grown way beyond that to be this 2-century survey of quilting in our area that started in the 1830s. So another key aspect of the Southern Quilting Project is the Big Bend Quilt Trail, which was first conceived of by our curator Angie Berry, who had seen this done in other parts of the country. And we meant to host a quilt trail that would celebrate the From the Cedar Chest exhibition, but again, it grew much larger than that through broad community support and this great love of quilting in this area. So the Big Bend Quilt Trail is quilt block themed murals that stretch from Chattahoochee west of us all the way across Gadsden County and down into Tallahassee. It will feature around 30 murals by 20 organizational partners. And again, just to invite all these different organizations to be a part of something like this and to have everyone say, gosh, that sounds fun, let's do it, is really exciting to have everybody coming together.
Let me tell you a little bit about our quilt square here at the Greensboro Depot Railroad Museum. The West Gadsden Historical Society picked this quilt square because it's representative of the depot itself. The depot is the last surviving depot of the Apalachicola Northern Line. It now houses a museum of railroad artifacts, not only for the Apalachicola Northern Railroad, but other railroads as well.
The Big Bend Quilt Trail and the From the Cedar Chest exhibition are possible because of the way this museum has grown. We have sort of an internal theme, always reach out. And that means always reach out to an individual who may never have been in a museum before, reach out to a new volunteer, a new member, to new partners, because partnerships always make projects better. And over the last 12 or 14 years, the organization has grown a lot. More and more people not only realize we exist, but feel that we do work at a high level. And through all of that collaboration and all of that growth, we've gotten to a point where we can ask all of these different people and organizations to be a part of something larger than any of us. And it's thrilling because they've all said yes.